Can you imagine the audacity? A slap echoing through a packed courtroom, a spark that sets an empire ablaze. When two racist cops lash out at a quiet black woman, they think it's just another day abusing their power. Oh, how wrong they are. She's no bystander, she's Judge Clara May, and in just 4 minutes, their world begins to crumble. This isn't just a story of arrogance and injustice. It's a thunderous roar of justice that shakes the very foundations of Charleston, South Carolina. How could one moment unravel so much? Charleston, with its graceful architecture and charming cobblestone streets, feels like a city perpetually at odds with itself. Beneath the whispers of an old world, deep tensions simmer, barely concealed. The sun's just peeking over the Atlantic horizon when Judge Clara May strides into the courthouse, her presence commanding yet understated. At 62, she carries a quiet authority that demands no introduction, her silver-streaked hair pulled tightly into a bun, her sharp brown eyes catching every detail, even the sly microaggressions people foolishly think they can sneak past her. Doesn't she just embody resilience? This courthouse, with its cold, towering neoclassical columns, has witnessed centuries of both justice and injustice. Clara's been navigating its marble halls for over 30 years. Can you believe that? First, as a defense attorney, tirelessly fighting for clients who were too often guilty of nothing more than being poor and black. Then, as a prosecutor, determined to root out the corruption festering within the system. Now, as a judge, she's the first black woman to sit on Charleston's highest bench. Isn't that monumental? Yet, some folks still can't stomach her presence, as if her very existence challenges their world. Clara knows breaking ceilings comes at a cost. People don't just throw rocks, they pretend you're invisible. How does she stay so composed? Stepping through the security checkpoint, she's greeted with respectful nods and warm smiles from the guards. Clara offers a curt nod in return, her mind already racing through the morning docket. It's supposed to be a routine arraignment, vandalism, a juvenile defendant, a simple bond hearing. But something feels off. Her instincts, honed over decades, are tingling like a warning bell. What's brewing today? The clerk outside her courtroom greets her with a strained smile that only heightens her unease. Good morning, Judge May. Officer Boone's already inside, the clerk says, her voice tinged with tension. Clara pauses, her heart skipping a beat. Boone? She asks, her tone measured but curious. Yes, ma'am. Sergeant Travis Boone, arresting officer in the Jameson case. He's been insistent, the clerk replies, her eyes darting nervously. Clara's jaw tightens. Oh, she knows Boone, everyone in Charleston law enforcement does. Mid-40s, clean-cut, a third-generation cop who struts around like he owns the place. A walking legacy of unchecked power, his smirk is practically standard issue. He's got favors banked across departments, ensuring complaints against him, harassment, excessive force, misconduct, vanish like dust swept under a marble rug. Clara's seen his name far too often in reports dripping with arrogance. Why does his presence feel like a storm cloud looming? She steps into the courtroom quietly, not yet in her robes, not yet on the bench, blending into the background like a shadow. Boone's already at the prosecution table, arms crossed, his sour expression practically shouting his impatience. The teenager he arrested, barely 16, sits with his public defender, his wide, unsure eyes betraying his fear. Boone doesn't even glance at Clara as she enters. Instead, he barks at the clerk, "Let's get this started. I don't have all day." Clara's voice cuts through the air, calm but firm. I suggest you find the time. Doesn't her restraint just make your heart race? Boone finally turns, his eyes narrowing as he stares at her. For a split second, confusion flickers across his face. He's trying to place her. Clerk? Assistant? Bailiff, maybe? She's not robed, not seated, so to him, she's nobody important. You here for the defense? He sneers, his voice dripping with smugness. Can you feel the tension crackling? Clara doesn't answer. She glides toward the side table to review a file, her movements deliberate, unruffled. The room's mostly empty, just a few early journalists, a handful of attorneys, and 2 officers lingering at the back wall. Boone, visibly irritated now, storms over to her. Hey, I'm talking to you, he snaps. And then, oh, can you believe it? A sharp, open-handed slap cracks through the air like a whip. The room freezes. A collective gasp ripples through the sparse crowd. Papers stop rustling, a coffee cup teeters on the edge of a table, and even the fluorescent lights seem to flicker in shock. Clara doesn't move. Her cheek burns, but she doesn't touch it, doesn't flinch. Slowly, she turns her head, her piercing gaze locking onto the man who dared lay a hand on her. Isn't her composure just awe-inspiring? Boone steps back, almost startled by his own action, but there's no shame in his eyes. Not even close, he mutters, his lips curling with disdain. You people need to learn some respect. Did he really just say that? A whisper from the back breaks the silence. Oh my God. Another voice, trembling, asks, is she okay? But Clara's eyes never waver from Boone's, not for a single second. Her stare is a force, unyielding, unbreakable. Boone straightens, completely oblivious to the trap he's just sprung on himself. I don't care who you think you are, he barks. You don't get to strut around this courtroom acting like. Clara takes a single step forward, then another. The silence tightens like a noose around the room. The clerk's voice trembles as she whispers, She's not in her robe. But Boone isn't listening. He doesn't see the shift, the horror dawning on the faces around him. Then Clara speaks, her voice calm, cold, and brimming with an authority that needs no robe to command. Is this how you treat officers of the court, Sergeant? Can you feel the weight of her words? The color drains from an officer's face at the back of the room. A lawyer's pen clatters to the floor. Boone blinks, stunned. What are you talking about? He stammers, his bravado faltering. Clara steps onto the platform, ascending with purpose. Up. Up. She turns and faces him from the bench. For one long, heart-stopping moment, nobody breathes. Sergeant Travis Boone stands like a statue, his eyes locked on Judge Clara May as she takes her seat behind the bench. The gavel hasn't even struck, but the judgment has already begun. Isn't this moment just electric? Boone blinks twice, once in disbelief, the second because for the first time in his career, he's afraid. Clara clasps her hands in front of her, her movements slow, deliberate, letting the silence press down on every soul in the room. Even Officer Mills, the bailiff, a steady man who's served with discipline for years, looks like he's holding his breath. Can you imagine the tension? Sergeant Boone, Clara finally says, her voice calm but sharp enough to slice through steel. Did you just strike me in this courtroom? Oh, how her words cut. Boone's mouth opens, then closes, his tongue darting nervously as if searching for a lie that won't come. I didn't know who you were, he mutters, already on the defensive. That is not what I asked, Clara snaps, her voice slicing through his weak excuse. Did you just put your hand on me? Yes or no? Isn't her precision just breathtaking? The gallery shifts uncomfortably. Someone, maybe a junior lawyer, has already pulled out their phone, and cameras are rolling. This isn't just misconduct, it's about to become undeniable evidence. Boone puffs up, his voice rising as he tries to reclaim control. You came at me. I didn't recognize you. You weren't in your robe. Clara's eyes narrow. I thought you thought I was beneath you, she says, her words landing like a hammer. Boone's jaw clenches, his face reddening. You're twisting this into something it's not, he protests, desperation creeping into his tone. I'm not twisting anything, Clara replies, her voice steely, unyielding. I'm describing exactly what happened. You assaulted a woman, unprovoked, in a courtroom. Your only defense is ignorance and arrogance. Can you feel the power in her clarity? Boone takes a step forward, then catches himself, remembering where he is. He glances at the other officers at the back of the room, but no one meets his eye. Clara's voice drops, sharper now, cutting deeper. If I were a white male judge sitting here with the same title, would you have slapped me without knowing who I was? Oh, what a question. Boone says nothing, but his silence screams guilt louder than any confession. I'll take that as a no, Clara says coldly. And now you've compounded that assault with defiance. Isn't her control just masterful? You're overreacting. Boone finally snaps, his voice cracking. I was doing my job. That kid, he jabs a finger toward the defendant, a thin, nervous teenager who looks like he wants to disappear behind his attorney's chair, is a thug. I caught him with spray paint and... Enough. Clara's voice thunders through the courtroom, shaking the very walls. The gavel slams down once, then twice, each strike a declaration of authority. You do not get to justify assault by pointing fingers at a juvenile defendant. Can you hear the righteous fury in her tone? She turns to the clerk, her voice crisp, commanding. Miss Harper, please enter into the record that Officer Travis Boone has admitted on the record to striking a sitting judge in a courtroom without cause or provocation. Isn't that a moment of pure justice? Boone takes a step back, his eyes wide as he finally senses the ground shifting beneath him. This isn't going to be swept away like his past transgressions. No union rep is going to swoop in and make it disappear, not this time. Clara glances at the bailiff, her gaze unwavering. Officer Mills, is this courtroom currently under video surveillance? Yes, Your Honor, Mills replies immediately, his voice taut with the weight of the moment. Good, Clara says. Then the record will also reflect visual evidence. Oh, how that must sting Boone. Boone's eyes dart to the corners of the ceiling, where two small red recording lights blink silently, watching him like unblinking sentinels. That's when his expression changes. He's not just angry anymore. He's scared. Can you imagine the panic setting in? I didn't mean, he starts again, but Clara raises a single hand, stopping him cold. You've had 20 years of not meaning it, she says, her voice laced with decades of frustration. I've read your file. I've seen the complaints. I've seen how they disappeared. But here's what's different today, Sergeant. This happened in front of witnesses, under cameras, to a judge. Doesn't her resolve just give you chills? Boone opens his mouth again, but Clara cuts him off, her words final. I have spent my life watching men like you mistake force for law, mistake fear for order, and mistake silence for consent. Not today. Oh, what a declaration. She rises from the bench, and the entire room straightens with her, as if pulled by an invisible force. In accordance with the authority vested in me as a circuit judge for the state of South Carolina, she announces, her voice ringing with power, and under Title 16, Chapter 3, Article 1 of the South Carolina Code of Laws, I hereby place Officer Travis Boone under formal judicial investigation for criminal assault on a public official. Can you feel the weight of history shifting? A gasp ripples from the back of the room, audible and raw. Clara turns to the bailiff, her tone unwavering.
Officer Mills, place Sergent Bounander temporary de timbre.
Do not apply cuffs yet. He is still a sworn officer, and I expect professionalism. But he is not to leave this room. Boone's mouth falls open, his chest heaving with disbelief. You can't be serious, he cries, his voice breaking. I didn't even know. And yet, Clara says quietly, her eyes unblinking, you knew enough to hit me. Isn't that just the perfect retort? Boone looks around wildly, searching for an ally, a lifeline, but there's nothing, just the slow, suffocating realization that he's tied his own noose. The courtroom door shuts behind the bailiff with a sound like a warning shot. Officer Mills stands near Boone, his hand resting lightly on his belt, not threatening but ready. Boone stands rigid, his face flushed red, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides as if he's holding back a storm of rage. But Clara? She remains standing behind the bench, her gaze pinning him like a steel rod. She doesn't blink, doesn't soften, offering no escape, no chance to slip into denial. Isn't her strength just breathtaking? This moment is more than a courtroom drama. It's a reckoning, a mirror held up to a city, a system, a society. One slap has ignited a fire, and Judge Clara May is the flame that will burn through decades of silence. How far will this blaze spread?
Oh, quand you believe the nerve of it all.
Judge Clara May stands tall behind the bench, her gaze like a steel rod pinning Sergeant Travis Boone to the spot. No blinking, no softening, no escape for him. How could he think he'd slip away from this? She's not just a judge, she's a force unyielding, refusing to let his defiance twist the truth. The courtroom is still reeling from his audacious slap, and now, Clara's about to turn this moment into something far bigger than Boone could ever imagine. Isn't her strength just electrifying?
A voice break the tense silence from the gallery. Your Honor.
It's the prosecutor for the vandalism case, an older man with thinning white hair, his face pale as if he's seen a ghost. Do you want to proceed with the docket? He stammers, clearly rattled.
Can you feel the weight of this moment?
Clara turns her gaze slowly toward him, her eyes sharp, deliberate. I'll decide that momentarily, she says, her voice steady but laced with purpose. But first, I need to address the gallery. What just happened here isn't about courtroom decorum, it's about law, precedent, and public trust.
Oh, Our word resonate, like a clarion call for justice.
She locks eyes with the journalists in the room, their pens poised, their cameras ready. You all saw it, she declares, her voice rising with conviction. You witnessed an on-duty officer physically assault the judge presiding over this courtroom. You heard his words, saw his posture. Record it.
Remembez it.
Because if the law can't protect those who enforce it fairly, we're not living in a democracy, we're in something much darker. Can you imagine the chills running through that room?
The silence is deafening.
Even the click of keyboard stops, as if the room itself is holding its breath. Then Boone, unable to contain himself, scoffs loudly. Are you really turning this into a damn press moment? He sneers, his voice dripping with contempt.
Oh, the arrogance.
Clara turns back to him, slow and deliberate, her eyes burning with a quiet fury. Is that what you think this is, Sergeant?
Public accountability? A moment of theater.
Her words cut like a blade, exposing his delusion. He says nothing, his bravado crumbling under her stare. She steps around the bench, descending the stairs, her heels striking the floor like a clock ticking down to his reckoning. You've been protected for a long time, haven't you? She says softly, so only those nearby can hear, but the microphone catches every word, amplifying her truth. I've seen officers like you before, the kind who strut into a courtroom assuming everyone's beneath them, who say I didn't know when they really mean I didn't care. Isn't her precision just breathtaking? Boone's eyes flick nervously toward Officer Mills, the bailiff, but Mills stands like a statue, unmoved. Let me tell you what's about to happen, Clara continues, her voice steady but laced with steel. Internal Affairs is being notified. I'll personally submit a formal complaint to the Attorney General's office before noon. The footage of this incident will be sealed for legal review, but the press in this room? They've got enough to make this headline news before lunch. Can you feel the ground shifting under Boone's feet? Boone's mouth opens, his voice trembling with desperation. You're destroying my life over a misunderstanding, he cries, as if he can still salvage this. No, Sergeant, Clara says, her tone final, unyielding. You destroyed your career the moment your hand struck my face.
Oh, how that trousselant like a thunderclap.
He shifts uneasily, glancing at the teenager he arrested, a boy no older than 16, sitting with his public defender. The boy's watching him now, not with fear anymore, but with something Boone can't quite place. Pity. It's the same look Boone's seen in the mugshots of men he's cuffed, right before the cell door slams shut. How does it feel to be on the other side, Boone? I've served this city for 20 years. Boone pleads, his voice louder now, almost begging.
I've risked my life on this street, taken down real criminal.
And now you're throwing me to the wolves because of a mistake in a tense moment.
Can you hear the desperation?
Clara turns, ascending the bench steps with a grace that belies her fury. I'm not throwing you to the wolves, Sergeant, she says, her voice calm but resolute. I'm handing you to the law. You've spent 2 decades hiding behind a badge. Today that badge doesn't shield you, it holds you accountable. Isn't that just the essence of justice? She sits, her robe folding around her like armor, a warrior in the fight for truth. She taps the microphone once, the sound sharp in the silent room, then addresses everyone. This courtroom is not adjourned, she declares. But the arraignment for the defendant in the vandalism case will be rescheduled for tomorrow. The arresting officer has compromised the integrity of this hearing. Oh, how her authority commands the room. The teenager's defense attorney stands, nervously adjusting his tie. Thank you, Your Honor, he says, his voice tinged with relief. Clara nods.
Take your client out through the west exit.
Escort him safely. Her care for the boy is palpable, isn't it? The boy rises, casting one last glance at Boone as he leaves. His face is unreadable, but his posture's different, less hunched, less apologetic. Boone, meanwhile, has gone quiet. His eyes no longer burn with defiance, they dart nervously, calculating, waiting. Clara watches him like a lioness studying a cornered predator, fully aware of the danger but in complete control. Can you feel the intensity? She leans into the microphone again. Officer Mills, please escort Sergeant Boone to Holding Room B. I will contact Internal Affairs and the Chief of Police myself. This matter is no longer internal, it's criminal. Oh, what a proclamation. Boone doesn't resist, but his jaw is locked so tight you can almost hear the muscles grind. As Mills gently taps his elbow, guiding him toward the side exit, Boone mutters, just loud enough for Clara to hear, "You think you've won, don't you?" Clara doesn't even look at him. She whispers, her voice soft but piercing, "I think for once the right person is losing." Isn't that just the perfect comeback? The courtroom doors close behind him with a thud that echoes like a gavel's final strike. The hallway outside buzzes with electricity, words spreading like wildfire. A judge assaulted by a cop. Not just any cop, but Travis Boone. And not just any judge, but Clara May. By the time Clara steps into her chambers, her phone's already blinking with 2 voicemails, one from the chief of police's office, another from Internal Affairs. She doesn't listen yet. Instead, she removes her robe with slow, steady hands, placing it gently on the hanger by the door. Can you imagine the weight she's carrying? She catches her reflection in the mirror. The red mark on her cheek has faded to a faint line, but it's still there, a silent testament to the violence she endured. She stares at it, not because it hurts, but because she needs to remember how it felt, how many others have left this courthouse with worse marks on their skin, their dignity, and never got a moment like this. How many have been ignored, dismissed, silenced? Her heart aches for them, doesn't it? A sharp knock snaps her out of her thoughts. It's Carter Lang, her bailiff of nearly a decade, broad-shouldered and stone-faced, but fiercely loyal. He steps in, closing the door softly, his hands clasped behind his back as always. But there's a tightness in his posture that betrays his unease. "They've taken him to holding room B," Carter says, his voice low. "Internal Affairs is sending 2 agents, ETA 20 minutes. Can you feel the urgency?" Clara nods. "Thank you." Carter hesitates, his eyes searching hers. "Judge, I heard from one of the clerks. Boone's union's already made a call. They're moving fast, trying to contain this." "Oh, the nerve of them." "Of course they are," Clara says, her voice calm but resolute. "But they're too late. This isn't going away." Isn't her determination inspiring? She moves behind her desk, sitting down and pulling a yellow legal pad from her drawer. Her handwriting is clean, almost architectural, as she begins listing: incident, courtroom assault. Status, on record. Witnesses, present. Cameras, active. Officer's record, prior complaints, X5 documented in last 7 years. Connection, ADA Ramsey's office approved dismissal of 2 prior excessive force cases with Boone. Judge notes, request review of dismissed cases. Her precision is staggering, isn't it? Carter watches in silence until she looks up, her eyes fierce. "I want every case where Boone was lead arresting officer or testified in the last 10 years pulled and flagged," she says. "That'll be a lot," Carter replies, his brow furrowing. Clara's eyes narrow, unyielding. "Then we'd better start now." Oh, how her resolve fuels the fight. Carter gives a slow nod, turning to leave, but Clara's quiet voice stops him at the door. "They think this was about a slap," she says, her tone heavy with meaning. He pauses, waiting. "They don't realize," she continues, "they just opened the door we've been pounding on for years." Can you feel the weight of that truth? The door closes behind him, and 30 minutes later, 2 Internal Affairs agents arrive, their presence like a storm rolling in. One is Agent Rosalind Keene, a no-nonsense black woman known for cleaning up corruption, not messes. The other is Agent Felix Reyes, a younger Latino man with sharp eyes and an even sharper tone. Clara's met Keene before. She's a legend in her own right, isn't she? They sit across from Clara at her conference table, Keene flipping open a thick file labeled Boone, Travis. "We've been watching him for a while," Keene admits, her voice steady. "But his record's just clean enough to avoid action. Too many convenient absences of evidence, too many cases closed with no follow-up." Oh, the frustration in her tone. "Convenient." Clara mutters, her voice dripping with disdain. That word should be a felony. Isn't she right? Reyes leans forward, his eyes intense. "Your courtroom surveillance is already backed up on our servers, audio and video. We've confirmed the strike, the statements, your response. We've noted who else was present. The chain of accountability is about to be tested. Can you feel the momentum building?" "I want more than accountability," Clara says, her voice firm, unyielding. "I want the foundation cracked wide open." Oh, what a mission. Keen studies her for a moment, a spark of respect in her eyes. Judge, how far are you willing to go with this? Clara doesn't hesitate. All the way. Isn't her courage just awe-inspiring? Reyes nods slowly, then pulls out a thumb drive, inserting it into his tablet and turning the screen toward her. It's an internal report from 2019, a civilian complaint, anonymous and brutal. Boone beat a 17-year-old boy during an arrest, doctored the body cam footage, and the original video vanished. The report was quietly closed, citing lack of evidence. Clara scrolls down and stops cold. The internal reviewer, Detective M. Whitaker. She looks up, her heart pounding. As in Captain Whitaker, Boone's former training officer, she asks, her voice tight. Reyes confirms, retired last year, but his entire command staff is still in place. Oh, the depth of this corruption. And now, Keen adds, tapping the screen, we found 3 more dismissed complaints. Same patterns, same signatures. Boone's name is always there, and so is someone else's. A new name appears, ADA Carson E. Ramsey, the prosecutor who's handled dozens of Boone's cases, who sat in Clara's courtroom countless times, always a bit too quick to cut deals with law enforcement. Clara remembers a moment, Ramsey giving Boone a sly pat on the back after a shaky testimony. How did she miss the signs? Her heart pounds as the realization hits. This isn't just about a violent cop, it's a system, a network. Boone isn't the rot, he's just the stench. What do you want to do, Judge? Keen asks, her voice steady but expectant. Clara looks at them, her voice quiet but laced with steel. I want a list of every case Boone touched, every complaint buried, every prosecutor who made it disappear. And I want them in my chambers by sunrise tomorrow. Oh, how her determination sets the stage for change. Reyes raises a brow. That'll take all night. Then don't stop working. Clara snaps, her eyes blazing. Keen smiles faintly, a glimmer of camaraderie. I think we're going to get along just fine. Isn't this alliance thrilling? By 6 a.m., the courthouse is barely stirring, its long halls echoing with a faint hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional shuffle of a janitor's mop. But in Judge Clara's chambers, it's a different story. No one slept. Not Clara, not her clerk, not the internal affairs agents who've spent the night digging through a decade of sealed complaints. The air is thick with purpose, isn't it? Carter arrives, silent as he places a steaming coffee cup on Clara's desk, then takes a seat in the corner, his eyes scanning a folder so thick it could choke a printer. Clara doesn't look up from her legal pad, her pen moving with relentless focus. How bad is it? Carter finally asks, though the grim set of his jaw says he already knows. Clara's voice is steady, unflinching, as she keeps writing. 19 complaints, all involving Boone. 12 against other officers under his supervision. For prosecutors who refused to press charges despite strong evidence. At least 2 body cam videos went missing under internal review. Oh, the scale of this injustice. Can you even fathom it? Carter lets out a long breath, running a hand over his jaw. That's not a bad apple, he says, his voice heavy. That's a rotting orchard. Isn't that the truth? Clara finally looks up, her eyes dark and clear, burning with resolve. And it's been protected, buried, maintained systematically, she says, her words a vow to tear it all down. This isn't just a fight for one moment, it's a battle to uproot a legacy of corruption. How far will Clara go to see justice done? Can you even fathom the depth of this corruption? Judge Clara May's pen flies across her legal pad, her voice steady as she lays out the staggering truth. 19 complaints, all tied to Boone. 12 more against officers under his watch. For prosecutors who turned a blind eye despite ironclad evidence. And at least 2 body cam videos, poof, gone under internal review. Her words hit like a sledgehammer, each one exposing a festering wound in the system. How could this have been hidden for so long? Carter lets out a long, heavy breath, his hand rubbing his jaw as if trying to process the enormity of it all. That's not a bad apple, he says, his voice thick with disbelief.
D'était sa rotting orchard.
Oh, isn't that the perfect way to describe this mess? Clara looks up, her eyes dark, clear, and burning with a fire that could light up the darkest corners of Charleston. And it's been protected, buried, maintained systematically, she declares, her words a vow to tear down this house of lies. Can you feel the weight of her resolve? Before Carter can respond, the sharp ring of her office phone cuts through the tension. Clara answers with a curt, "Judge May." Her tone is all business, but there's an edge to it, like she's bracing for a storm. The voice on the other end is calm, male, and chillingly familiar. "Clara, it's Chief Nolan." Oh, why does his voice send a shiver down your spine? She leans back in her chair, her posture relaxed but her mind razor-sharp. "I was expecting your call, though not this early," she says, a hint of defiance in her tone. "I assume you know why I'm calling," Nolan replies, his voice low, cautious, like he's tiptoeing around a minefield. "I assume you've seen the footage," Clara shoots back, not missing a beat. Can you feel the tension crackling through the line? A pause. "I have," he admits. Another pause, heavy with unspoken words. "I'm not calling to defend Boone," he adds, as if that could soften the blow. "No," Clara says, her voice cutting through his pretense. "You're calling to control the explosion." Oh, how she sees right through him. Nolan doesn't deny it. "Clara," he says quietly, almost pleading, "you need to understand what you're stepping into. This isn't about one officer losing his temper. You're pulling on a thread that could tear this department apart." Can you hear the fear in his voice? That's exactly the idea. Clara retorts without a moment's hesitation, her words a battle cry. Isn't her courage just breathtaking? "I'm not your enemy," Nolan insists, but there's a strain in his tone now. "You've been silent for years." Clara fires back, her voice steady but laced with righteous anger. "Silence is complicity, Chief." Oh, how that truth stings. He sighs, the sound heavy with resignation. "I've got the union breathing down my neck," the mayor demanding answers, "and now I hear you've contacted Internal Affairs directly because your department didn't." His words are clipped, frustrated. "You're escalating this," he accuses. "No," Clara says firmly, her voice a beacon of clarity. "I'm revealing it." Can you feel the power in her conviction? There's a long silence, and when Nolan speaks again, his tone is sharper, less polite, like a mask slipping. "Look," he says, "you want Boone to pay? Fine. He's a problem. I'll back your request for charges. But if you keep dragging in names, commanders, prosecutors, past leadership, you're going to cause a collapse none of us can clean up." Oh, is that a threat? Clara's voice remains steady, unshaken. "Then maybe it's time we stopped trying to clean and started rebuilding." Her words are a challenge, a vision of a better future. Isn't she just unstoppable? The line goes dead, the silence ringing in her ears. Clara stares at the phone for a long moment, her heart pounding but her resolve unbreakable. She places it back in the cradle with a quiet, deliberate motion, as if sealing her commitment to this fight. Carter raises an eyebrow, his expression a mix of concern and admiration. "That sounded like a threat wrapped in a peace offering," he says, his voice low. Clara nods, a faint, determined smile tugging at her lips. He's scared. Good. Oh, how satisfying is that? Just then, the door swings open without a knock, and Agent Rosalind Keene strides in, her face grim, clutching a slim red file that seems to pulse with secrets. "We found something you need to see," she says, wasting no time. "Can you feel the urgency?" Clara stands, meeting Keene halfway, her heart racing as Keene opens the folder. Inside is a transcript, an audio recording, surveillance audio from the precinct, dated 2 years ago. Boone's voice, unmistakable, drips with arrogance as he laughs in a locker room. "You ever see her up close? That Judge Clara something, walks around like she owns the courthouse. Thinks the robe makes her bulletproof." Oh, the gall of that man. Another voice, still unidentified, chimes in, "She ever come after you?" Boone laughs again, his tone smug. "Let her try. I've got friends higher than her. She steps too far, and I swear, she'll never even make it to the bench." One complaint, and poof, activist judge out the door. Can you believe the audacity? Clara stares at the page, her pulse ticking in her throat, then looks up at Keene, her eyes blazing. "Who else heard this?" she demands, her voice tight with fury. "We just pulled it," Keene replies. "It was flagged in another investigation but buried under non-priority files." And the second voice, "We're still running voice recognition, but we think it might be Ada Ramsey." Oh, the plot thickens. Clara's jaw tightens, her mind racing. If you can confirm that.
We will.
Keene interrupts, her voice firm. But there's more. She pulls another document, a list of recent internal case reviews. There was an emergency meeting at the DA's office last night, she says, her tone grim. Someone's trying to pull your case from the bench, claiming conflict of interest, saying you can't preside over a case where you were the victim. Can you feel the betrayal? Clara's jaw clenches, her eyes narrowing. They're trying to remove me, she says, her voice a mix of disbelief and determination. Carter curses under his breath, his frustration palpable. Keene nods, her expression resolute. If they succeed, they'll bury Boone in a minor misconduct charge and cut him loose with early retirement. You'll be recused, and the narrative will shift to emotionally compromised judge. Oh, how insidious is that? Clara walks back to her desk, her steps deliberate, her mind a whirlwind of strategy. The clock on the wall reads 7:02 a.m. The courthouse will open in under an hour. I want a public hearing, she declares, her voice ringing with purpose. I want the press there. I want the record to show I requested the transfer, not because I couldn't be impartial, but because I refused to let this go quietly. Isn't her defiance just electrifying? Keene gives a slow, impressed nod, a spark of admiration in her eyes. You want to go on offense? She asks, a hint of excitement in her voice. No, Clara says, her eyes burning with a fierce intensity. I want to go nuclear. Oh, what a moment. Outside her chambers, the courthouse is coming to life. Staff are arriving, phones are ringing, and journalists are gathering like birds sensing a storm. Through the blinds, Clara catches sight of a black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. Someone's coming for her. But they'd better come prepared, because if they try to silence her, she'll make sure the whole city hears her scream. Can you feel the stakes rising? By 9 a.m., the courthouse is a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters linger in corridors, their notebooks ready. Court clerks whisper in doorways, their voices hushed but urgent. Attorneys avoid eye contact, sensing the unraveling of something massive. Judge Clara May steps into the main courtroom, flanked by Carter, her loyal bailiff, and Agent Rosalind Keene, her fierce ally. She's not in her robe today, no, she's not presiding. Today she's fighting. Isn't that just thrilling? The courtroom buzzes as she enters, but the whispers die fast, the room falling into a tense hush. At the far end, Assistant District Attorney Carson Ramsey stands beside a young white man in a tailored gray suit, a representative from the State Ethics Board. His name tag reads Elliot Parrish, but his cold, unblinking stare screams Hatchet Man. Can you feel the confrontation brewing? Judge May, Parrish greets with a tight, insincere smile. We've received your request for a public hearing regarding your recusal. I'm here to clarify it and make it part of the public record. Clara replies, her voice firm, unyielding. Oh, how she commands the room. They sit, the press watching from the back rows, their eyes glued to the drama unfolding. I've reviewed the argument filed by the DA's office, Clara begins, her tone steady but charged with purpose. They claim I'm emotionally compromised, potentially biased due to the incident with Officer Boone. Can you believe they'd try to spin it that way? Ramsey doesn't flinch, his face a mask of calm. Our concern is purely procedural, he says smoothly. You're the victim of an alleged crime committed by the defendant. Under state statute, a judge may recuse themselves to preserve impartiality. I'm fully aware of the statute. Clara interrupts, her voice cutting through his excuses. Which is why I'm choosing to step down from the Boone arraignment, not because I'm compromised, but because I refuse to let this case be quietly diluted. Oh, how her words resonate. She turns to the press, locking eyes with a young black female journalist in the front row, her gaze fierce and unwavering. I'm requesting that the Boone case be elevated to special review status, she declares. And I'm formally requesting an independent federal monitor to investigate the handling of previous cases involving Officer Boone and his collaborators. Can you feel the room shift? A murmur ripples through the courtroom, the air buzzing with shock. Ramsey leans forward, his voice tight. Judge, I caution you. This isn't the forum to suggest conspiracy. I'm not suggesting it. Clara snaps, her voice cold as ice. I'm proving it. Oh, what a moment. She hands a file to Agent Keene, who places it on the table between them and opens it with a deliberate flourish. Inside, 3 complaints, 5 sealed memos, 2 missing bodycam logs, and a court transcript from a 2018 juvenile trial, all bearing Carson Ramsey's signature. You declined to prosecute Boone in 5 separate cases, Clara says, her voice ringing with accusation. Despite documented excessive force and contradictory statements under oath. And in every one of those cases, the defense was pressured into plea deals, many involving young black defendants without legal representation. Can you imagine the injustice? Ramsey's face pales, but he says nothing, his silence damning. Keene places a second document on the table, her voice cool and precise. And here's a wire transfer, Mr. Parrish, she says, addressing the ethics board rep. It shows a $15,000 contribution to the state judicial endowment from an entity tied to the Charleston Police Benevolent Fund. That money was meant for a scholarship program, but half was rerouted into a legal defense fund used last year for Officer Boone. Oh, the audacity of it all. Parrish swallows hard, his composure cracking. That's not relevant to the ethics motion, he stammers. It is if it shows collusion. Clara counters, her voice unwavering. If public funds are being funneled into legal shields for corrupt officers, it's more than relevant, it's a pattern, and I'm naming it now. Isn't her clarity just stunning? She turns to Ramsey, her eyes boring into him. Tell me, Mr. Ramsey, who protected Boone when the body cam footage disappeared in 2019? The one where a minor ended up in the hospital. Her question hangs in the air like a guillotine. Ramsey opens his mouth, then closes it, his silence deafening. Clara waits, unyielding. Keene steps in, her voice steady. We believe the footage wasn't lost. It was redirected. Clara raises an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. To where? She asks, her tone sharp. Keene slides over a slip of paper, her eyes never leaving Ramsey. To an external server owned by a private security contractor based in Atlanta. That contractor has a retainer agreement with the Charleston mayor's office. Oh, the layers of this scandal. And who approved that contract? Clara asks, her gaze locking onto Ramsey. He says nothing, his face a mask of guilt. Keene delivers the final blow. You did. Can you hear the room explode? The courtroom erupts, shouts, flashing cameras, people standing to whisper frantically. Ramsey leaps to his feet, his chair screeching behind him. This is character assassination, he cries, his voice trembling. This is exposure. Clara replies, her voice steady, resolute. And it's long overdue. Oh, how her words cut through the chaos. Parrish rises, visibly shaken, his hands trembling. I need time to process this information, he says, his voice weak. You'll have it, Clara says, her tone firm. But let the record reflect that I'm voluntarily recusing myself to protect the process, not because I was pressured, not because I was intimidated, and not because I'll be silent. Isn't her strength just awe-inspiring? She turns to the reporters, her voice resonating like a bell through the chaos. This city has protected a system of unchecked power for far too long. Today isn't about a slap, it's about what happens when someone believes they can act without consequence because every layer above them is willing to look the other way. She looks directly at Ramsey, her eyes piercing. Those layers are crumbling. Can you feel the ground shake? Ramsey storms out, a blur of whispered phone calls and sweat, with Parrish trailing behind. Clara turns to Keene and Carter, exhaling slowly, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. You think they'll come after you? Carter asks quietly, his voice tinged with concern. Clara doesn't hesitate. They already have, she says, her voice steady but fierce. Just then, her phone buzzes, the screen lighting up with a message from an unknown number. You need to stop. 5 chilling words, no name, no explicit threat, but the menace is clear. She shows the screen to Keene, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Keene reads it, her lips curling into a grim smile. Good, she says. That means we're hitting nerves. Oh, how thrilling is that? Clara looks out the courtroom window, her gaze sweeping over the city's skyline, the buildings, the offices, the rooftops hiding secrets. She's not just trying to convict a cop anymore, she's dismantling a machine. And somewhere in that machine, someone powerful is watching, their plans unraveling with every move she makes. How far will this battle go? This isn't just a courtroom drama, it's a revolution, a mirror held up to a city steeped in silence. Judge Clara May is the flame that will burn through decades of corruption, and she's only just begun. Can you feel the fire spreading? Can you feel the chill in that cell? It's not just the cold concrete bench digging into Travis Boone's bones. It's the spiritual frost, a soul-deep emptiness that seeps into every corner of this tiny gray-walled prison. This place is designed to hollow a man out, to strip away everything he thought he was. No badge, no gun, no shield to hide behind. Just 4 unyielding walls and the dawning realization that the world outside has shifted, leaving him behind. How did it come to this for a man like Boone? Sitting still, Boone stares at his hands, strong calloused hands that once yanked a drug dealer off a porch in North Charleston, broke up brawls behind dingy warehouses, scribbled countless reports, and delivered courtroom testimony with a voice that never wavered. Those hands commanded respect, instilled fear. Now they tremble slightly, betraying the cracks in his once ironclad confidence. Can you imagine the weight of that moment? The guard outside hasn't uttered a word in over an hour. No friendly nods, no casual banter, just a tight jaw and eyes that slide past him like he's invisible. Even here, locked away, Boone is utterly alone. He bolts to his feet, pacing the cramped space like a caged dog, his heart pounding. His whole career, he believed he was untouchable, that no matter how messy things got, someone higher up would sweep it under the rug. And they always did. But this time? Oh, this time is different. He slams his fist against the wall, not hard enough to break bone, just enough to feel the blood still pumping through his veins, to remind himself he's not yet broken. Can you feel his desperation? Suddenly, the lock clicks, a sharp sound that cuts through the silence. The door creaks open, and a man in a gray suit steps inside, older bald, his eyes cold as winter. Boone tenses, his instincts flaring. "Who the hell are you?" he demands, his voice rough with suspicion. The man shuts the door with a quiet thud, offering no name, just tossing a file folder onto the bench like it's a grenade. "Your lifeline," he says, his voice smooth but menacing. "Or your anchor." Oh, what does that even mean? Boone scowls, his patience fraying. "I don't play cryptic," he snaps, his fists clenching. "Then I'll be clear," the man replies, his tone icy. "I represent interests deeply concerned with what Judge May is stirring up. You've been useful, Sergeant. But now? You're a liability." Can you believe the nerve? Boone bristles, his pride wounded. "A liability? I gave everything to this department," he roars, his voice echoing off the walls. "Which is why they haven't thrown you to the wolves yet," the man says coolly, unfazed. "But understand this, if you sit here and let her control the narrative, we won't protect you." Oh, the betrayal cuts deep, doesn't it? Boone narrows his eyes, his mind racing. "Then what do you want me to do?" he asks, his voice low, wary. The man's lips curve into a slight, chilling smile. He opens the folder, revealing pages of notes on Judge Clara May, her address, her family history, old photographs, one even showing her with her late husband, a former attorney now gone. Boone's pulse quickens, a sick feeling rising in his gut. "This is surveillance," he says, his voice tight with disbelief. "This," the man corrects, "is leverage." Oh, the audacity. Boone steps back, his mind reeling. "Are you out of your damn mind? You want me to threaten a judge?" he asks, his voice a mix of shock and defiance. "No," the man says, his tone smooth as silk. "We want you to warn her, subtly. She's too bold right now. She needs to remember that power doesn't come from robes or courtrooms. It comes from fear. You know how to deliver that, don't you?" Can you feel the sinister undertone? Boone stares at him, his heart pounding. This isn't a rescue, it's a dare, a high-stakes gamble. "If I do this," he says slowly, "what do I get?" "A lifeline," the man replies, his voice calm but loaded with promise. "One that keeps you out of federal prison. One that puts you on a private security payroll for a firm that never asks questions." He taps the wall gently, the sound like a ticking clock. "Or you rot here, forgotten." Oh, what a choice. Then, just as silently as he came, the man leaves, the door clicking shut behind him. Boone stares at the file for what feels like an eternity, his mind a battlefield of fear and temptation. Finally, he picks it up, his trembling hands betraying the storm inside him. Can you imagine the weight of that decision? Across town, Clara May strides through the courthouse halls like a warrior heading into battle, her coat draped over her shoulders, her heels echoing sharply against the marble floors. The press is back in full force, a swarm of reporters buzzing around her. Some offer respectful nods, others whisper behind raised phones, their cameras snapping like vultures circling. Inside her chambers, Carter Lang, her steadfast bailiff, is already waiting, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. "You didn't answer my text," he says, his tone a mix of concern and gentle reproach. "I needed air." Clara replies, her voice carrying the weight of the storm she's facing. "You also have 6 voicemails," Carter adds, his eyes scanning her face. 3 from the mayor's office, 2 from the ethics board, and 1 from your sister. Can you believe the pressure piling up? Clara raises an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise breaking through her resolve. "My sister?" she asks, her voice softening. "She saw you on the news," Carter says, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Said you looked taller." "Oh, isn't that a moment of warmth in the chaos?" Clara allows a half-smile, but the weight of her mission hasn't lifted. She sits behind her desk, her eyes scanning the latest file from Agent Keene, updates on ADA Ramsey and a redacted name tied to a suspicious private contract. Her mind is racing, piecing together the puzzle, when her phone buzzes, the screen lighting up with a message from an unknown number. She opens it, and her blood runs cold. "Nice house in Mount Pleasant. Does your nephew still bike home alone from school?" Oh, how chilling is that? Clara freezes, her hand gripping the phone so tightly it might crack. The words blur slightly, but their razor-sharp threat cuts deep. She stands, strides to the door, and locks it with a decisive click. Can you feel her heart pounding? Carter notices, his eyes narrowing. "What's wrong?" he asks, his voice urgent. She hands him the phone, her face a mask of controlled fury. He reads the message, and his eyes darken instantly. "That son of a," he starts, his voice thick with anger. "Don't say it." Clara cuts him off, her tone sharp but steady. She walks to the window, staring out at the city skyline, her mind racing. Somewhere out there, someone's trying to remind her of the rules, of how this game has always been played, of how women like her are supposed to stay quiet or pay the price. But Clara? She's done playing by their rules. "I need a name," she says, her voice low, resolute. "Whoever sent that message." Carter nods, his jaw tight. "I'll get it," he says, his loyalty unwavering. "And Carter," she adds, her voice softening but firm. "Yeah. I want my nephew pulled from school, quietly. And I want someone I trust to watch my sister's house." Can you feel her protective instinct kicking in? Carter doesn't argue. He picks up the phone and starts dialing, his movements swift and purposeful. That night, Boone is moved, not released, not officially transferred, but relocated in a shadowy operation with no paperwork, no explanation. He's led through the precinct's back corridors like a fugitive smuggled through enemy territory, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. He's handed a burner phone, an unregistered vehicle, and a name, Clara May. Oh, what a dangerous game he's being pulled into. The man from the cell appears again, leaning into the car window, his voice low and menacing. One warning, clean, subtle. You don't touch her. You don't even see her. You just make her feel it. Can you imagine the sinister weight of those words? Boone starts the engine, his hands gripping the wheel. "I've been making people feel things my whole life," he mutters, his voice a mix of bravado and dread. And then he vanishes into the Charleston night, a ghost on a mission. Can you feel the tension rising? The next morning at the courthouse, Clara receives a package. No return address, no label, just a plain envelope that feels like a bomb waiting to go off. She opens it, and her heart stops. A photograph of her nephew taken 2 days ago, walking home from school, his backpack slung over one shoulder. On the back, scrawled in jagged block letters, "Stay in your lane." Oh, how that threat lands like a punch. Clara stands still for a long moment, her breath shallow, her mind racing. Then she picks up the phone, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Get me the U.S. Marshal's office," she says, her tone a mix of fury and resolve. Whoever's knocking on her door, they're about to learn what happens when a judge stops playing by the rules and starts writing her own. Can you feel the fire in her? The federal building in downtown Charleston is a fortress, bland on the outside, cold as ice inside, secured down to the last screw. Clara sits across from 3 U.S. Marshals and 2 DOJ officials, their files open, pens poised like weapons. She slides the photograph across the table, her voice calm but unyielding. "My nephew," she says, "taken 2 days ago without his knowledge, sent to me this morning in an unmarked envelope with a warning." Can you imagine the gravity of that moment? The man behind it? Travis Boone. One of the marshals, a tall gray-haired man named Mercer, examines the photo with an expressionless face. "You're certain it's him?" he asks, his voice measured. Clara's voice doesn't waver. "I'm certain it came from someone acting in his interest. Boone doesn't send messages like this unless someone gives him the green light." Oh, how she sees through the layers of deceit. "What exactly are you asking us for, Judge?" Mercer asks, his eyes narrowing. Clara leans forward, folding her hands, her gaze fierce. "I want full protection for my family. I want Boone in federal custody by the end of the day. And I want an emergency judicial order freezing every case tied to his testimony for independent review." Can you feel the power in her demands? The DOJ rep, a woman named Frances Kwan, raises an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. "That's going to shake Charleston's courts for months," she says, her voice tinged with caution. Clara meets her gaze without blinking, her resolve like steel. "Then let them shake." Oh, what a declaration. No one argues. Within an hour, a team of marshals is en route to Boone's last known location, and Clara is back at the courthouse, not as a judge behind the bench, but as a force of nature storming its halls with purpose. She meets Agent Keene outside the district records room, where Keene stands holding a new folder, her face grim. "We traced the burner phone," Keene says, her voice low. "Boone used it twice last night. Once to a number registered under a shell company in Atlanta. That company shares office space with a lobbying firm tied to your mayor's re-election campaign." Can you believe the depth of this conspiracy? Clara exhales sharply, her mind racing. "So the rot goes beyond the courts," she says, her voice a mix of shock and determination. Keene nods, her expression dark. "Way beyond." "Oh, how far does this go?" Clara's voice drops to a whisper, her eyes narrowing. "You said the shell company was flagged before, twice. First in a corruption probe 3 years ago, buried without action. And the second?" Keene's lips press tight, her voice heavy. 6 weeks ago, in a financial audit request made by a local journalist. Her name was Julia Spence. She disappeared 2 days later. Body found in her car, ruled an overdose. Can you feel the chill of that revelation? Clara's jaw tightens, fury building in her chest, not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that sharpens your focus, that makes you plan. "Let me guess, she didn't have a history of drug use," she says, her voice low, controlled. "Nope," Keene replies. "She had a history of exposing corrupt officials." Oh, the tragedy of it. Clara stares down the hallway, her heart pounding with a quiet, burning rage. "Find me everything the journalist was working on," she says, her voice resolute. "Every source, every file. If there's a thread she was pulling on, we're going to rip it out of the wall." Can you feel her determination? Keene hesitates, her eyes searching Clara's. "Judge, this may go far beyond Boone," she warns, her voice cautious. Clara turns, her voice quiet but unwavering.
I'm counting on it."
Oh, what a mission. Across the city, Boone's knuckles are white against the steering wheel of his borrowed sedan, his eyes bloodshot, his stomach empty. He hasn't eaten, hasn't slept, his phone buzzing relentlessly with messages from unknown numbers, some barking orders, others issuing warnings, a few from old friends now turning cold. He's running out of time. He thought the photograph would rattle Clara, remind her she didn't belong in this war. But instead, it's awakened a fury in her, and now he's the one being hunted. Can you feel his panic? He pulls into a downtown parking garage, the space half empty, the echoes of his footsteps bouncing off the concrete. From the trunk, he grabs a duffel bag, cash, a second burner phone, a Glock he's not supposed to have. He's not going down without a fight. But before he can reach the stairwell, a voice cuts through the silence, sharp and commanding. "Sergeant Boone." Can you hear the finality in it? He spins, his gun halfway drawn, his heart pounding. 4 U.S. Marshals step from the shadows, their weapons already raised, their faces like stone. "Put it down, Boone," one says, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. Boone freezes, his breath catching. For the first time, there's no bluff to play, no one coming to save him, no deal waiting in the wings. He drops the bag, the sound echoing like a death knell. Then the gun clatters to the ground. Finally, his knees hit the concrete with a dull final thud, the sound marking the end of his reign. Can you feel the weight of his defeat? Back at the courthouse, Clara receives the alert at 3:14 p.m., Boone in federal custody. Unarmed, arrested without incident. She doesn't smile, there's no victory in this, only confirmation of the path she's chosen. She's already in a meeting with Keene, Carter, and DOJ Rep Francis Kwan, who's returned with reinforcements and a briefcase stuffed with newly unsealed documents, each one a piece of the puzzle Clara's determined to solve. This isn't just about one man, it's about dismantling a system that's been rotting for years. Can you feel the momentum building? Clara May is no longer just a judge. She's a force, a storm tearing through Charleston's corrupt foundations. And as the city watches, one question lingers. How deep does this corruption go, and how far will Clara go to expose it? Can you imagine the audacity of those who thought they could bury the truth forever? In a quiet office overlooking Charleston, Judge Clara May sits with DOJ Rep Francis Kwan, Agent Rosalind Keene, and her loyal bailiff Carter Lang, surrounded by files that scream of corruption. Kwan's voice cuts through the tension, her words heavy with revelation. "We've reopened the Julia Spence file," she announces, her tone resolute. The initial autopsy was inconclusive, but the coroner's report? It was altered after submission, from a private login that's vanished from the records. Oh, how sinister is that? Clara's voice drops to a whisper, barely audible but laced with fury. Somebody's been erasing truth like it's pencil. Can you feel the weight of her words, the betrayal she's uncovering? Not anymore. Kwan declares, her eyes flashing with determination. Isn't that a promise of justice? We've launched a joint task force, internal affairs, federal investigators, and an external judicial review board. Keene adds, her voice steady but charged with purpose. Boone's not talking yet, but mark my words, he will. Oh, can you sense the momentum building? Clara gazes down at the file spread before her, a grim tapestry of names, cases, and patterns, a map of injustice, a blueprint of decay. But now, finally, there's a trail of accountability, a path she's carved through the darkness. She rises, her movements deliberate, and walks to the window, her heart pounding with the weight of what she's set in motion. Outside, the sun dips below the city's edge, painting the courthouse steps in a golden glow. She sees them, reporters scribbling furiously, protesters with clenched fists, survivors clutching signs with Boone's name, and others holding faded pictures of loved ones whose cases never found justice. Their pain, their hope, their fight, it's all there, reflected in the fading light. Can you feel the heartbeat of this moment? Carter steps beside her, his voice soft but filled with awe. "You did it, Clara," he says, his words a quiet tribute to her courage. "No," she replies, her voice steady but humble. "I just turned on the light. The roaches scattered themselves." Oh, isn't that the perfect metaphor for her impact? He smiles faintly, a rare crack in his stoic demeanor. "What now?" he asks, his eyes searching hers. Clara exhales deeply, her breath carrying the weight of years spent fighting. "Now we see how deep the tunnel goes," she says, her voice resolute, her eyes burning with purpose. And oh, how deep it will go. Boone's not the only one facing indictment, and Clara May? She's far from done. She's ready to burn this corrupt house to the ground. Can you feel the fire in her soul? The press conference is set for 10 a.m., but by 9:30, the front steps of the Charleston courthouse are a sea of humanity. Local reporters jostling for position, national correspondents with cameras rolling, legal observers scribbling notes, survivors of police brutality standing tall, and citizens waving signs that declare, "Justice for all or justice for none." Clara stands at the edge of her chamber's window, watching the crowd swell, her heart swelling with both pride and sorrow. She's not in her robes today, no, she's traded them for a fitted black blazer over a deep charcoal blouse, no bench to hide behind, no barrier between her and the people. Today, she'll face them as a citizen, a fighter, a force of nature. Isn't her transformation just breathtaking? Boone's been moved to a secure facility, Keene says behind her, her voice steady but urgent. And he's talking. Can you believe it? Clara turns, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. To who? she asks, her voice sharp. DOJ agents, Keene replies. He's naming names. Oh, the stakes are skyrocketing. How many? Clara presses, her heart racing. Keene hands her a sheet, her expression grim. 12. 7 police officers, 2 ADA prosecutors, 1 retired captain, 1 city council member, and 1, she pauses, and Clara's throat tightens, sensing the bombshell, Judge Benjamin Halcraftoft. Can you feel the shock? Clara stares at the name, her breath catching. Halcraftoft, a man she clerked for as a law student, who mentored her, guided her, called her the future of Charleston law. His name burns into her desk like a brand. No, she whispers, her voice trembling with betrayal.
Ben.
How could he be part of this? Carter leans over her shoulder, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark with disbelief. That man swore you in, he says, his voice thick with anger. Can you imagine the sting of that betrayal? Keene is gentle but direct, her voice cutting through the haze. He also signed off on at least 3 questionable case dismissals tied to Boone. One was a civil rights complaint that vanished before it even hit a hearing. Oh, the depth of this corruption. Clara's hands ball into fists, her nails digging into her palms. This goes deeper than crooked cops, she says, her voice rising with realization. This is institutional, judicial, political, generational. Can you feel the enormity of what she's uncovering? Keene nods, her eyes mirroring Clara's fire. The kind of network that survives by feeding off silence. Then we make noise. Clara declares, her voice a clarion call. Starting now. Oh, what a battle cry. Outside, cameras flash like lightning as Clara steps up to the podium, the crowd falling into a hushed, reverent silence. She looks out over the city, not just with resolve, but with a heartbreak that cuts to her core. I became a judge because I believed in the promise of justice, she begins, her voice steady but filled with emotion. But promises mean nothing if they're not kept. Today, I stand not just as a member of the court, but as a witness to what's broken and what must be rebuilt. Can you feel the weight of her words? She pauses, lifting the folder in her hand, its contents a weapon against corruption. This document names 12 individuals who, over the last decade, colluded to protect each other while abusing their authority. She announces, her voice ringing with authority. Some are police officers, some are attorneys, and one is a sitting judge. Gasps ripple through the crowd, shutters click, phones shoot up to capture the moment. Can you hear the shock wave? I've submitted this list to federal investigators, she continues, her voice sharpening. I won't read them aloud, not because I fear backlash, but because I believe in due process, something many of them denied to others. We're not here because of one man's slap. We're here because of what that slap revealed, a system built on fear, silence, and loyalty to everything but the truth. Oh, how her words cut through the lies. From the back, a voice shouts, "We believe you, Judge May." Applause erupts, scattered at first, then swelling into a roar. Carter stands to her left, stone-faced but proud, his presence a quiet anchor. Keene lingers near the crowd, her eyes scanning rooftops, alert for threats beyond the applause. Because now that the names are public, Clara's painted a target on her back, and someone's already taking aim. Can you feel the danger lurking? That evening, as the courthouse empties and the streets quiet, Clara returns to her chambers, exhausted but still burning with purpose. Her phone buzzes, a voicemail from a blocked number. She presses play, and a voice she hasn't heard in years slices through the silence, smooth, precise, refined like a scalpel.
It's Judge Halcraftoft.
Clara, he says, his tone chillingly calm. I imagine you've seen my name on one of those lists. And I imagine you're feeling betrayed. But before you commit to destroying everything we've built, understand this. Some structures survive because they must. You take us all down. You take down the last bit of order this city has.
You don't want chaos, Clara. You don't want blood.
Walk away while you still have that option.
Or you want just lose your seat, you lose everything.
Click. Can you feel the menace in his words? The silence that follows is heavier than any threat. Carter walks in moments later, his coat still damp from the evening drizzle. Did I just see a black SUV pull away from the loading dock? He asks, his voice tense. Clara looks at him, her eyes steady but burning. Halcraftoft just called me, she says, her voice low. Carter's face hardens, his fists clenching. He threatening you? He demands, his loyalty fierce. No, he warned me, Clara replies. Which is worse? Oh, how that question hangs in the air. He crosses his arms, his stance unyielding. You're not backing down, he says, more a statement than a question. She looks him straight in the eye, her resolve like iron.
No ta chance.
Can you feel her unbreakable spirit?
By midnight, the backlash begin, insidieux and swift.
A smear article pops up online. Judge May accused of improper conduct during 2009 case.
No source, no évidence, juste vague accusation dripping with manufactured outrage.
Then come the bots, flooding social media with hashtags like #ActivistJudge and #MayMustResign, their digital venom spreading like wildfire. Within hours, news outlets are bombarded with anonymous tips about Clara's supposed ties to radical organizations. A photo surfaces, Clara in college, her fist raised at a protest, a moment of youthful passion twisted into something dark and sinister by a malicious caption. Can you believe their gall?
It's worse.
Her nephew's school receives a call from a concerned citizen questioning whether the boy's being indoctrinated. They're not just coming for her name, they're targeting her bloodline, her family, her heart. Clara sits in the dark, staring at the headlines, the screenshots, the digital poison seeping into her legacy. Carter stands at the door, arms crossed, his voice heavy. They're going to try to discredit everything, he says.
Burn your credibility, your legacy.
Oh, how cruel is their strategy. Clara nods slowly, her eyes narrowing with determination. Then we change the rules, she declares, her voice steady, resolute. She stands, pulls open her desk drawer, and hands Carter a small black binder, its pages heavy with secrets. What's this? He asks, his brow furrowing. Everything I've never said out loud, she says, her voice soft but fierce. About Hal Kraftoft, about cases that didn't sit right, about whispers I overheard in back hallways and at country club dinners. Can you imagine the power in that binder? Carter flips through the pages, his eyes widening with each revelation. Clara, this isn't just a defense, he says, his voice tinged with awe. This is a nuclear weapon. Oh, how right he is. I'm not just trying to survive anymore, Clara says softly, her eyes burning with purpose. I'm going to make sure they can never hide again.
Can you feel the shift in the air?
As Charleston sleeps, files are duplicated, evidence archived, allies contacted. In her quiet office overlooking the city, Clara prepares for the final trial, not of a man, but of the very machine that enabled men like Boone. 3 weeks later, the federal courthouse downtown is a fortress of anticipation, standing room only, cameras lining the halls, protesters and supporters packing the plaza, a perimeter of U.S. Marshals guarding the building. The air inside is thick, not just with expectation, but with history. Clara sits in the front row, not on the bench, not behind the gavel, but as a witness, a citizen, a force of change. On trial, Travis Boone, charged with assault of a federal judge, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to suppress evidence, witness intimidation and perjury, 5 felony counts that could shatter his world. But Boone's not the only one in the crosshairs. Behind closed doors, indictments have been unsealed. ADA Carson Ramsey has resigned in disgrace, negotiating a plea. Judge Hal Kraftoft is suspended pending investigation. 2 precinct captains have been fired. 3 officers have turned state's evidence, and the mysterious handler who approached Boone in his cell has vanished like a ghost. The web is unraveling, and Clara, she lit the match.
Can you feel the flame spreading?
The prosecutor rises, his voice commanding. Your Honor, the state calls Judge Clara May to the stand. The courtroom holds its breath, every eye on her. Clara stands, walks calmly to the witness box, and takes her oath, her presence a beacon of truth. She sits, composed, clear, her strength radiating. The prosecutor approaches. Judge May, what happened on the morning of April 11th? He asks, his voice steady. Her voice rings through the courtroom, not loud, but grounded, immovable. I was struck in the face by a man who believed I didn't belong, she says, her words cutting through the silence. Can you feel the power in her truth? The prosecutor nods. And what did that moment mean to you? He asks, his eyes locked on hers.
Clara pose, her gaze steady.
It meant the system I'd spent my life serving could no longer protect those who served it, she says, her voice heavy with conviction. That respect, law, and truth had become negotiable, reserved for those who fit a certain mold. She looks across the courtroom, not at Boone, but at the jury, her eyes piercing. But it also meant something else, that silence could no longer protect us. That if I didn't stand up, others would stay down. Oh, how her words resonate. The prosecutor nods, satisfied. No further questions, he says, stepping back. Boone's lawyer approaches, young, tense, clearly outmatched. He fumbles through his cross-examination, his voice shaky. Judge May, do you think you're above the law? He asks, his tone almost accusatory. Clara looks at him as if he's a student asking why the sky is blue, her expression calm but piercing. No, I think I'm beneath it, like everyone else, she says, her voice steady. That's the point. Can you hear the clarity in her response?
L'octaire murmure through the crowd, à ripple of support.
The judge bangs his gavel once, restoring order. The defense attorney tries again, desperation creeping into his voice. Do you admit you brought personal bias into this investigation? He asks, grasping at straws. I brought truth. Clara replies, her voice unwavering. And if that truth is uncomfortable, that's not bias, that's justice doing its job. Oh, what a powerful retort. The jury watches her, unblinking, their faces a mix of awe and conviction. Boone watches too, but for the first time, there's no rage in his eyes, just a hollow defeated look, the gaze of a man who knows it's over. 2 days later, the verdict comes, guilty on all counts. Sentencing will follow, but Boone's no longer the headline. The ripple effect has become a tidal wave. A week later, a statewide investigation into judicial misconduct is launched. Over 140 past convictions are placed under review. A civil rights commission begins auditing officer complaint procedures. The governor calls for a bipartisan reform task force, and the Charleston Police Department is thrust under full federal oversight.
Can you feel the system shaking?
On a rainy Thursday, Clara returns to the courtroom where it all began, the echo of that slap still lingering in her memory. Everything else has changed. She stands alone before the bench, staring at the chair she once ruled from, her reflection gleaming in the polished wood. Carter walks in, his coat damp from the rain. They want to name the judicial conference room after you, he says, a hint of amusement in his voice. Clara raises an eyebrow, a wry smile tugging at her lips. I haven't died, she says, her tone light but firm. Exactly, he smirks. It's weird. Oh, isn't that a moment of levity? Her smile fades, her expression turning serious. Are the reforms going to stick? She asks, her voice heavy with concern. Carter shrugs, his honesty raw. Some will. Others will take time. Clara nods, her eyes distant. That's what they never tell you about justice, she says. It's not a moment, it's erosion and rebuilding. Can you feel the wisdom in her words? He hesitates, his voice softening. You sure you want to do this? He asks, his loyalty unwavering. She turns, her gaze steady. I have to, she says, her voice resolute. That afternoon, Clara stands before the State Judiciary Review Board, flashes popping, microphones clicking on like a chorus of anticipation. She clears her throat, her presence commanding. I am submitting my resignation, she announces, her voice clear, unwavering. Gasps ripple through the room. Can you believe it? I believe in the law, she continues, her voice rising with conviction. I believe in its power to protect, to punish, to heal. But I also believe institutions must be rebuilt by new hands. I lit a fire, it's not for me to stand in its glow. Oh, how her sacrifice resonates. A board member stands, his voice earnest. Judge May, your actions have inspired a movement. You could stay and lead that change, he pleads. Clara smiles sadly, her heart heavy but her resolve firm. Change doesn't need a monument, she says. It needs momentum. She turns to leave, but not before delivering one final charge. Make sure the next woman who wears this robe doesn't have to fight the way I did just to be heard. Can you feel the hope in her words? 2 months later, Clara returns to her family's house in Mount Pleasant, the quiet strange after the storm. The silence isn't threatening anymore, it's cleansing, like a fresh start. Her nephew bikes in from school, his backpack swinging, his face lighting up when he sees her on the porch. He drops his bike and races up the steps. "Auntie Clara!" he shouts, his voice full of joy. She catches him in a hug, strong, long, silent, her heart swelling with love. "I saw you on TV," he says into her shoulder, his voice muffled but proud. "I know you made them listen." She pulls back, looking into his eyes, her voice soft but firm. "I made them look," she says. "Listening? That's still up to them. Can you feel the bond between them?" He nods solemnly, with a wisdom kids shouldn't have but often do, his young face reflecting the weight of her fight. They sit on the porch as the sun sets, the city buzzing beyond the hills, but here it's calm, serene. A breeze rustles the trees, and Clara closes her eyes, exhaling, not in surrender, but in peace, a rare moment of stillness after the storm. Isn't this the calm she's earned? This isn't just a courtroom drama, it's a mirror held up to society. Racist Cop Slaps the Wrong Judge is a story of power, prejudice, and the steep price of silence. But more than that, it's about the courage to stand when others kneel, to speak truth when the world demands your quiet. Judge Clara may embody something rare and honest, a woman of integrity who rises not through revenge, but through justice, a beacon for those who fought too long in the shadows. She reminds us that no matter how mighty the system seems, it's built by people, and people like Clara can change it, especially those who've lived long enough to know what's truly worth fighting for. Can you feel the inspiration in her story? For older generations, this tale strikes a deeper chord. You've watched decades pass, seen injustice recycled in new forms, yet hope endures when someone like Clara refuses to back down. Her stand isn't just for herself, it's for the next generation, for her nephew, for the forgotten, for all of us. Her legacy is a call to action, a reminder that truth still matters, that justice, though slow, can echo through generations. Isn't that a legacy worth fighting for? Clara May's fight has turned a single slap into a revolution, a spark that's ignited a city and beyond. As the sun sets on Mount Pleasant, her story continues to burn bright, a testament to the power of one woman's courage to challenge a broken system and demand better. How will her light inspire the world to change? Oh, what a story of courage and conviction. Judge Clara May's journey in Racist Cop Slaps the Wrong Judge is a heart-wrenching, soul-stirring testament to the power of one woman's resolve to confront a rotten system head-on. I'm deeply moved by her unyielding spirit. She's not just a judge but a beacon of hope, standing tall against a tide of corruption that's festered for generations. Her pain, especially when betrayed by her mentor Hal Kraftoft, cuts like a knife, yet it's a refusal to bow to fear that truly resonates. How does someone find such strength? Clara's fight isn't just about a single slap, it's about dismantling a machine that thrives on silence and complicity. Her willingness to risk everything, her career, her safety, even her family's peace, to expose this injustice is nothing short of heroic. That moment when she hugs her nephew, knowing she's fought for his future, brought tears to my eyes. It's a reminder that justice isn't abstract, it's personal, generational, and worth every sacrifice. I'm inspired by her humility, too. Resigning to let new hands rebuild the system? That's not defeat, that's wisdom, a selfless act to ensure the fire she lit keeps burning. Clara's story challenges us all. What would we do when faced with such darkness? Would we stand, speak, fight? Her legacy is a call to action, a reminder that truth can shake foundations and that one voice can echo through time. For those who've seen injustice persist, her story offers hope, hope that change is possible, that the forgotten can be remembered, and that justice, though slow, is relentless when fueled by hearts like hers. Clara May is a hero for the ages, and I'm in awe of her light.